if you'd like to share your screen. Or
So hello everybody, first of all, and thanks Nicola, that talk was really really interesting. I am just going to bring this up now. Okay, no worries. Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm kind of taking you down a slightly different path from the path that Nicola went on, and want to have a little bit of fun and talk about a serious issue in a slightly different way. So my talk today is going to be mainly about kind of agency culture and looking at a different type of leadership, just kind of taking inspiration from the women in content topic. So there's a lot of Fleabag in it, essentially. So I am Rowan Morrison. For those who haven't heard me speak before or who haven't heard of me, I am managing director of a brand purpose agency called Rationale, which is based in Edinburgh, as you can probably tell from my accent, but we work with clients in the UK and the USA to support them in defining their narrative and what they stand for and how they communicate that with their audiences. So our proposition is about delivering brand relevance, and we're very focused on the kind of performance aspect of that and actually the measurement of the purpose that you put out there in the world. So today, as I said, I want to talk about women in the ad industry, really, and the fact that we're still in a little bit of a grim place. Also, particularly in leadership. So there's statistics out there that show very clearly that women outnumber men in creative agencies. I think the stat's about 54% women. But only 1% of creative agencies are female founded, which is a very, very small number, and one that's very interesting in a number of ways as to why that actually is. The gender pay gap in creative industries is somehow, despite all the noise about how we approach diversity and inclusion and how agencies are trying very hard to address this gap, it's actually increasing. And it widened 1.1% last year. So again, the divide between the kind of mass of women who work in creative industries compared to leadership is getting worse rather than better. And I think there's a lot of tokenism as well in terms of people viewing putting women into leadership roles as a tick box exercise. Only 3% of creative directors are women, and this is despite around 70% of design students being female. So there's something happening between university graduation and actually getting a senior role in the industry where women are simply disappearing. And okay, there's some positive momentum, but it's slow. So Campaign School Reports, which is really interesting source of kind of statistics on our industry, if you're interested in that kind of thing, shows that 43% of agencies now have women in senior management positions, but that's the definition of that is quite wide. Just as a kind of personal anecdote, Rationale, my agency, just recently we've decided we'd like to take on a non-executive director to support us in our growth. And we were inundated by applications. We got over 100 applications for the non-exec role from extremely impressive individuals, but only 3 out of those 100 were from women. And I found that very depressing, and also wondered why that might be. So is it because there's less experienced women out there who could perform a non-exec role for an agency, or is it because women actually who have that experience don't really value that and don't feel that they're in a position where they feel worthy of passing it on? So it's a bit one to think about. So why is this happening then? So there's a lack of female role models in the industry. When you have, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy really, if you don't have people who are women in leadership positions, then there's nobody to look up to and aspire to and think, well, I can do that too. There's definitely unconscious and probably subconscious bias in hiring practices. People tend to hire people like themselves. And that affects diversity in a whole number of ways. Obviously, we're talking about gender today, but when you get to BME statistics, they are even worse. So there are very, very few Black minority ethnic individuals who are in leadership positions in agencies as well. And obviously, we all know the advertising industry tends to reward traits like bullishness, power playing, people self-promoting, working very long hours, one-upmanship, taking the credit. It's very ego-driven. So, and I think that is starting to change in a lot of ways. Obviously, we're all about purpose at Rationale, and you can see that more kind of stakeholder focus is really coming to the fore now, particularly, as we're all going through this pandemic. But it's definitely still there, and that tends to be, and I don't think that it's exclusively, but it tends to be more, those are more male traits. So how can we make a change? We need a new form of leadership, really. And again, this isn't about, female leadership in particular, but it's a different type of leadership. And again, I just wanted to say another thing about agency culture here. I gave a Women in Content talk live and in person with actual people, I think last year. And at the end, I spoke about similar topics, and at the end, a young woman came up to me and asked me very earnestly when I thought that she should have children so it didn't impact her career. And that was astounding to me, that someone thought that they had to ask me my opinion of when they should have children, because they felt that would hold them back in their career. And that really inspired me to think about the way that we set up our agency. And what's wrong in our business, that's a question that should even be asked. So things that we can do, we need to take a look at agency culture, as I say, and stamp out poor behaviours. There's an interesting statistic that I found from George Washington University that said that men are 33% more likely to interrupt a woman than a man. It's called man-interrupting. So things like that need to be stamped out. And that's not just about leadership. It's not just about top-down culture change. It's about people actually calling that out when they see it at all levels. And I think that form of leadership is the type of leadership that is meaningful. So again, not necessarily coming from women exclusively, but that kind of less hierarchical form of leadership that rewards, a much wider set of traits such as empathy, empowerment, transparency, people collaborating, emotional intelligence. Obviously, women are women who have children benefit from more flexible working hours, but men who have children do too. And that's something that I think particularly agencies struggle with because of the kind of client demand, but it can be done if you're open-minded. You can have flexible working hours, you can have job shares, you can have all these things that really create that much more inclusive environment. And also, this doesn't happen just by saying you want it to happen. You need to be very proactive, and you need to put actual processes and practices in place that are well communicated and that are rewarded meaningfully in order to make a change. And again, I think there's a lot of talk and not a lot of action. So that's all the grim stuff. I now want to kind of talk about, take some inspiration from my favourite TV characters. So this is about kind of, we're all in a lockdown, we're watching a lot of box sets, and taking inspiration, thinking about those role models. So what I've done is kind of taken some quotes from these ladies and kind of tied it into what I feel about female leadership, and also what us all as women, as individuals, can do to kind of put ourselves forward and make a change in agency culture that will benefit everybody, and also benefit what we do, the creativity and the passion that we have for what we do. So, and I should say, one terrible omission I have to admit to is I prepared this presentation before I started watching Normal People. So I don't know if anyone's watched Normal People yet. But it's probably one of the best TV series I've seen for a very long time, and I would have definitely included Marianne for those who have been watching it and didn't. So yeah, bit of a gap at the moment. But yeah, so here's Fleabag, who I love. And she says, people make mistakes. That's why they put rubbers at the end of pencils. And this, I think, refers to vulnerability. So vulnerability is a good thing. Agencies that I've worked in the past, and I'm sure a lot of people who have dialed into this webinar have had a similar experience, can operate a kind of pervasive blame culture that has everybody on the back foot. They kind of cover their backs. They, want to take credit for the good things, but they want to distance themselves from the bad things. There's definitely ego that comes into play in a lot of advertising agencies. But actually, that is so counterproductive to creativity. Out of mistakes come true creativity. So I think it's on all of us who work in this industry to form agencies where fallibility is celebrated and people feel safe to try new things and to fail. And I think as well, that isn't just about agency culture, it's about client marketing culture as well, because clients need to understand where agencies add value, and it is in that creativity. So they need to give agencies space to fail. And we've all been in a position where, as agency people, where we've tried something creative and the client has struggled with that, and we've felt like, we've stuffed up, and that's bad, and that now puts that account at risk. And that is so narrow and so counterproductive to doing great work. So clients should understand, if they are bringing in an agency, that they, it's their job almost to be the editor. So they let the agencies go to the very outer ends of where they're comfortable, and then they can draw them back a bit, but that's where they add value. And that means sometimes they'll get it wrong, and that's okay. And there's so many rich learnings that can come from that. So vulnerability is good. This is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So she says, even if you see them coming, you're not ready for the big moments. It's what you do afterwards that counts. That's when you find out who you are. So obviously vulnerability is important, making mistakes is important, but it's also okay for women to celebrate their success and put themselves forward. Just sharing a personal story, because I think that's important in this context. I haven't always been a managing director. I entered this industry as a writer, and was lucky enough to have a very supportive managing director at that time who saw something in me and kind of had to persuade me basically to be promoted 2 or 3 times, because I saw myself as a creative. I didn't think that I could progress in the way that she was a woman, she saw in me. So but not everybody kind of has that person who will kind of bring your potential out of you, so you need to represent that for yourself. And I think what that also shows, that story, is that actually the best talent in your team isn't always screaming, look at me, promote me, sitting on top of a neon unicorn. It can be in a corner, very quietly and modestly, knocking it out the park day after day after day, and perhaps letting that unicorn, to extend that weird metaphor that I've just stumbled into, take the credit. So you need to, as a leader, not just pay attention to the loudest voices. You need to seek out that talent and help them to reach their full potential, even if they don't see it in themselves. And again, empathy and leadership is what creates that culture where every single person is noticed and rewarded for their value. However, that isn't happening everywhere, and it probably won't ever happen anywhere. So it's to a degree on us women to kind of throw ourselves at these big moments that Buffy speaks about, even if you're scared of them, because that's where growth comes from. Those are the moments that develop you and really make you who you are. Daenerys from Game of Thrones. So this one, she says, it seems to me that a queen who trusts no one is as foolish as a queen who trusts everyone. And I think this is about, how you are perceived and how you perceive other people. So, teamwork is obviously more important than the actions of one individual. And I think, again, something that is very important is being okay about asking for support, ask for help in your career, look at your network. And again, show your vulnerability, particularly obviously at the moment. A lot of us in this industry will be struggling. They're, you know, things are happening that are beyond our control. Make sure that you make that clear what you need, and tell people, because I think that's really important. Again, be vulnerable. There's a book called The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer, which is a really good reference for that. But also you need to be canny in your career. So there's this kind of rhetoric out there that there's a kind of really supportive sisterhood, that women always support other women, and that's not actually always true. Sometimes women, female leaders can be counterproductive to bringing other women on. That doesn't always happen, and when it doesn't happen, you can feel quite lonely. So I think it's really important to align yourselves with people who celebrate you, who make you feel good, who bring out the best in you, who build you up and not knock you down. And if you do work for somebody who is knocking you down and making you feel crap about yourself, then, you know, be brave enough to understand it's not about you, and to you know, take yourself elsewhere and find the people who do know you and who you can trust. And again, don't compare yourself to other people. I think women in particular are terrible for that. They look at other people's success and they measure themselves against that, and that is, again, so limiting in terms of what you can become. Carrie Bradshaw from Sex and the City. I have been rewatching all of Sex and the City from season 1 because my agency does a lot of work in New York, and I'm not able to travel to New York at the moment, so it's kind of as close as I'm getting. So Carrie Bradshaw, who's one of my all-time favourite TV characters, actually, says, maybe the past is like an anchor holding us back. Maybe you have to let go of who you were to become who you will be. Which reminds me of another big hero of mine who isn't a woman, Bruce Springsteen. Bruce Springsteen said that you shouldn't let the person you once were drive the car, that they'll always be in the car with you. They'll maybe be shouting at you from the back seat, but you shouldn't let them drive, which I think is lovely. And I think I personally have gone through many different iterations of who I thought I fundamentally was and who I let drive my car. So yeah, as I explained, first I was a writer and a creative, and I thought that was all of me. I thought that's how my brain worked. I thought that was where I added value. And when I was persuaded by my then boss to take an account director role, I tried very hard to talk her out of that. And say I couldn't do finances. You know, I wasn't commercially minded. I was a creative person. I was potentially a strategist, but really I was a writer. And then when she did persuade me, I found actually that I could be creative and be good at finances. And I had this inherent commercial instinct that I didn't know I had, and that I otherwise probably would never explored, and I would never have built out as a strength of mine if I hadn't had someone who had that faith in me. So please don't define yourself in narrow terms, because other people are lazy and they will just accept that as all of you, and you'll hold yourself back, and then you might miss out on those hugely challenging but very rewarding experiences that do unlock capabilities in you that you otherwise don't know you have. You know, everyone talks about this imposter syndrome, and that is definitely a thing. So do try and let that go, and let those different versions of you take the driver's seat. Alicia Florrick, she is from a brilliant TV series called The Good Wife. So if you've not seen that, check that out. And I have this thing where when I am presenting or I'm going into a business meeting, I try and embody Alicia Florrick. She's a lawyer, and she just has this incredible kind of pragmatism and confidence, but again, vulnerability. So she's a really well-rounded character. So she says, I've decided life's too short not to be honest. Now, I've got mixed feelings about this. I hate when people say, you know, I like to tell it like it is, because actually I think that's a bit sociopathic, and we can't all go around tipping tables over and you know, demanding things go our way all the time. But also it's about, you know, leadership shouldn't be a dictatorship. So I think the best agencies are those where the wider team can make a change and take ownership of that change, importantly. So take on practical actions to support their leadership team and bringing initiatives to fruition. So I think, in the context of wanting to kind of change agency culture, I think if you see something happening in your agency, or if you're a client and in a marketing team, if you see something happening that you don't like, you should be able to speak up about that to your boss, to your CEO, with a plan for how you intend to support them in addressing it. And if you feel there is not a path for you to do that, or your boss kind of turns you away from their door when you go with that plan, then I suggest you go to a new place of work, because that's not somewhere where you can thrive. So this is my last Fleabag. So I won't swear, but being proper and sweet and nice and pleasing is a nightmare. It's exhausting, and I just feel like all of this. So yes, we need to be kind, we need to be empathetic and vulnerable to play as a team, but I have learned as I get older and I gain more experience in this industry, that you should never hide who you are. You should never compromise your true personality, because Fleabag's right, it's exhausting and it takes up so much of your energy trying to be what other people think you should be, or your perception of what they think you should be. Every aspect of you is right, nothing is wrong. So do learn to trust your instincts and be okay with making mistakes and getting it wrong. If you do get it wrong, and my God, I have got it wrong, it's okay. Again, be okay with being vulnerable. Apologize. Say I'm sorry, I was wrong, and move on. And I think that's what earns you respect, not just this gung-ho, bullish, my way or the highway approach. And then if you do get it wrong, trying to kind of cover that up. People will respect you for being vulnerable. People will expect you for taking ownership of your mistakes. And then they'll feel they can make mistakes too. And then you have a better creative agency. I think, it's a cliche and it's perhaps a sweeping generalization, but I do think that women are terrible at being self-critical. They question their instincts. They try and fit some kind of mold they perceive as being the right mold, perhaps suppress aspects of their personality, such as, emotion. And I doubt many men sit of an evening replaying conversations in their minds and wishing things had gone a different way. And I've met a lot of female leaders actually who have obviously at some point read a book or decided they need to be a certain way in order to be respected and to be a leader. And I just think that's bullshit, actually. You need to be true to yourself. And like Fleabag, if that's been a bit wild and messy, then, be wild and messy. Be unapologetic about who you are. Focus on your strengths, obviously. But yeah, don't compromise yourself for anyone, would be my advice. So one last slide. This is my good friend and business partner, Fleabag, Sven Clouston. So this is my strategy director, because I wanted to make the point that it's not just about women, and supportive men are crucial in championing female success and modelling empathetic leadership. And my agency is co-founded 50% male and female, and obviously Sven is very comfortable in his masculinity, and we both love Fleabag, so came to my Halloween party last year dressed like this. Just thought I would share that, because he tends to try and ask me difficult questions when I do these webinars, so I thought I'd sabotage him for a change. So do get in touch if you want to have a dialogue on anything I've spoken about. That's my email address there. Do follow myself and Rationale, our agency page on LinkedIn. For other content, Sven and I do a podcast called Have You Ever, which isn't about marketing, it's just about sharing wonderful things, and we're doing a kind of lockdown special at the moment, just kind of advising on things like TV programs that we are enjoying, that are making us happy while we deal with this lockdown situation. So that's me. Thank you very much. We'd love to answer any questions that you have.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Rowan. Some questions to put to you, if you don't mind.
Okay, no, absolutely.
What do you think are the main reasons behind why there's so few female founders? Could it be a confidence issue, or perhaps women facing more challenges or having their motives scrutinized more, or something else?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said, I think it's a combination of things. I think it's a combination of women holding themselves back and being held back. So I think their agency culture, as I say, particularly in London, is pretty cutthroat and pretty hard. The hours are very long, so obviously, you know, women tend to be in you know, parenting more than men, so that's difficult to sustain if you have children, and I think that's definitely a thing, and it definitely needs to change. I also think, just in my experience as a manager, I you know, it is a thing that women tend, and I've done this myself, women don't tend to put themselves forward in the same way for promotions. And again, when you're in an industry that rewards bullishness and, you know, confidence and extroversion, that can mean sometimes that women are more likely to be overlooked than men, because men are better at pushing for things. I mean, there's a study that's been done that I find really interesting around, you know, job descriptions and actually applying for jobs, that women will scan the skills required, and if they don't have one or two, they'll go, like, actually, you know, I better not apply because this isn't for me. Men will apply anyway. So there's a whole, I mean, you know, there's societal, systemic stuff at play. There's hiring practice bias, where if you obviously have a man in leadership and he wants to hire someone for his leadership team, he's much more likely to hire a man or somebody like him. So there definitely needs to be a kind of proactive change where people actually acknowledge it and start to force that to be different. But yeah, I think there's hundreds of things at play, and it is getting better. It's not getting better fast enough, but you know, people are starting to talk about it more, which is great.
Excellent. The next question is from Lauren. Do you think this culture is, and a kind of a follow-on really, do you think this culture is why so many women end up going freelance or setting up on their own?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So, I mean, I left my previous agency for various reasons, but we had a parent company that all the leadership team were basically men. And I felt that it wasn't even so much about me being a woman, it was more about diversity. Wasn't encouraged. I think taking control of your own destiny is a very powerful thing, actually. But it's interesting that, you know, women do go freelance, but only 1% of agencies are female founded. And again, you know, as an entrepreneur, I have children who are through there playing Xbox while I talk to you all. You know, it's hard. It's a hard shift, and you do have to make compromises. Men and women have to make compromises, you know. But yeah, I think that's absolutely why that happens. Which again, obviously, if people are en masse leaving agencies to set up freelance, that will be why you see less women in those agencies.
Next question is from Frankie. Men seem to be more comfortable peacocking and glory hunting. Do you have any do you have any tips on how to show your value without peacocking? A very broad stereotype, obviously not true in all cases. That's what Frankie.
Yeah, well, I know many men who don't peacock, actually. So I should say that I know lots of lovely men, although I have met some peacockers in my time. Yeah, I think, do you know, this is so hard, and it's like I say, you know, in my presentation, you know, what you need in that situation is an empathetic boss who will go, right, okay, this person's screaming at me, you know, how great they are, and that person over there is actually doing a brilliant job, but I've hardly spoken to them. And that needs effort. You know, you need to really, you know, search that out. I've done it for other people. I'm you know, proud to say, and it was definitely done for me. I mean, I literally tried to talk myself out of promotions, which now when I look back, I just could slap myself. So yeah, you need that, but you won't always get that. So you can put yourself forward. If you're not, I mean, this is not to do with male, female at all. This is to do with personality. But if you struggle to vocally put that forward, then email your boss, you know, say to them what your worth is, show them, you know, what you've achieved. And I think that is something that actually agencies are good at. They're good at rewarding talent, I think, if they see it. So yeah, I think if you're in a situation like that where you find it difficult to find a path, then, you know, capture what you have achieved in your role, over deliver on the role that you're in now, and make sure that your boss hears about that, whether that's in person in a meeting, or through through a stakeholder that you feel you can talk to, or send them an email. I would say, but be brave. Yeah.
just got a couple of questions more, if you don't mind, Rowan.
Sure.
I've got a question from Rachel, which is, How do you think we can truly get men on board with this, getting them to truly care, speak up, take action? And secondly, how can we go beyond shining a light on women and making sure we include women of colour in a discussion?
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really important, actually. And I think men, I really hate the kind of, if I'm honest with you, the kind of male-female rhetoric, because I think, you have good men, bad men, bad women, in terms of, I've had women hold me back as much as I have had men hold me back. So I think, it's to do with benefit, isn't it? With anyone, it's so I think if men see a benefit from diversity, so if you have and I think again that is being acknowledged now. There's studies being done, there's statistics out there that show a diverse workforce is a more successful workforce. Businesses that put diversity at their core achieve better, they outperform their peers, and that's across all industries. So I think it's that benefit analysis, and again, finding champions in your team who are, aligned with that. What I would really hate to see is, in agencies that do decide to do something proactively, that they don't include men in that dialogue. So if you start to kind of look at diversity in your agency, don't just make that, BME and women, include a diverse point of view, and men should be part of that, and actually difficult men should be part of that, so that they can be part of that dialogue, feel heard, buy into what you're trying to achieve, and yet ultimately see the benefits of it.
From Amy, do you think COVID will help with flexible working for women, in that it's shown that we don't have to be in the office 5 days a week, 9 to 5?
Yeah, see, I've been thinking about that a lot, actually, and how what's happening now is impacting creativity, because I think creativity is about collaboration and brainstorms and teamwork, and I think it isn't conducive to that, actually. And I think there's always going to be a need for people to be working together. That said, I work from home at the moment because our agency's small, and yeah, I think there will be some change. I think probably the change that if I'm honest with you, and I'm not an expert on this, but I think a lot of the change that we think is going to be enduring might not be. I think people have short memories. I think when we get on the other side of this, I think things will seem to change for a while, and then I think we'll probably, will achieve some change, but I think maybe not as profound as people are suggesting, because I think we'll move on, and I think in a degree, that's a good thing in many ways. I think now, though, employers will struggle to say that this can't happen, is if they, have not seen any negative impact from people working from home, then if you'll have a better case now to make that, if that's fundamental to how you need to work, then and you can show that you can still do your job, that they won't have a leg to stand on now. So yeah, I think that's a good thing, and I think that will change. But yeah, I think we're going to see a combination of things happening once the pandemic's over, that we'll keep a little bit of the good stuff that's happening now, but I think it might not be as fundamental as some people believe. But that's my opinion.
Again, thank you so much for that, Rowan. Thank you for all the questions.